You're watching Storytellers, and our guest today is Suneet Varma. Suneet, you've been designing for how many years now?
Too long.
Tell us.
I think this is my 30th, 31st year working.
Wow.
Since I got my education from Europe and having had come back and actually having had worked in Europe for a couple of years with Yves Saint Laurent and then moved back to India, it's my 31st year working and I love it.
How was it working as an Indian 30 years ago with Yves Saint Laurent?
Well, I think Yves Saint Laurent was a very prolific designer, and he looked at a lot of interesting cultures that he was inspired by. So he did a wonderful Russian collection, he did a wonderful Chinese collection, he did something on Turkey. And at that point, when I was working with them, they were specifically looking at India as a huge inspiration, the Maharaja and the India and the Indian colors as a massive inspiration. So I think for them, they literally handpicked me from college because they were looking for an Indian intern who could also tell them about color and textile. And because I was Indian and studied in Europe, it was an interesting combination for them.
How nice. So
but of course, I only picked pins off the floor. I did nothing else.
So when you did come to India, you were so young. How did you decide to start your own brand? And was it tough, or because India was in this phase where there were no fashion designers, the beginning was just fantastic?
Yeah. Well, I think when I came back to India, initially for a couple of years, I did some freelance work with some export houses, designing, coordinating with their international buyers, and sort of translating the inspiration through patterns and artworks and motifs and things like this. But you have to also understand there were very few Indians who were actually had a fashion education then. In fact, there were literally a handful, Maybe I was one of the first 5 or 10 in the country because NIFT came after. So a lot of the designers that you see today, J.J. Valaya, Rohit Bal, a lot of them are actually NIFT graduates, which actually came after. Even Tarun went to school much after I had started my career. He's my age or older, but he went to fashion school later because he had already done his business from Wharton, so he's super bright. When I came back, I sort of started working with export houses and things like this, and then eventually I realized I want to do my own thing. So one of my patrons, she gifted me one machine and one small cutting table, which I still have. And I hired one tailor who could cut and sew, and I still have him 31 years later in my company. And that's how it started. So I'd go buy the fabrics in the morning, make something. I had a small little studio at Hoskas Village. Somebody would buy something, and then slowly, that's how it built.
And was it tough at any point of the business? I mean, I'm sure back then everybody was excited, but then you've been around for 30 years and we all know businesses go through cycles. So which part was tough and how did you kind of overcome that?
So I think initially people didn't really understand what it meant to be a fashion designer. They thought maybe you're a glorified tailor, but all due respect to Indians, we were not used to being given design advice. You'd go to a tailor, you'd have a beautiful fabric, you'd take a tear out of a magazine and say, make me this, or make me this sleeve, and make me this neckline, or make me look thin, or make me look tall, whatever. There was nothing called design advice, And so I think it took a little while for people to understand that you can go to designers, they understand mood boards, inspiration, they understand color, they understand, embellishment, they understand revivalists, they understand research, and these are actually very important parts of a fashion designer's business, to do a lot of research. Like, let's say if I did my first ever collection in I think 91 or 92, and that famous Greek collection where I made the breastplate. That sort of catapulted me into another sphere altogether. It came on the cover of India Today, it came on the cover of every international magazine. I started getting calls from Hong Kong and China and the US, New York Times. So I think,
Which year was that?
This was year 1992.
Okay.
1992. It was literally my first ever show. And it suddenly just went out of nowhere. And again, I was being true to my inspiration, and I was doing an ode to Botticelli, my favorite painter. And I was taking inspiration from Birth of Venus, the painting, and created something like that with a very whimsical, sort of crinkled chiffon on it, and people in India just got massively titillated, And even till today, I mean, I still get calls from magazines, and it's like one of those things that sort of became my USP. So I then started to work with the idea of corsetry. I started to work with the idea of bustiers. I started to work with things that actually are kind of attractive and sexy and a little unusual, and that sort of became my DNA, I feel.
All right. And in the 31-year journey, was it ever really tough? And how did you overcome that?
Of course it was tough. There was times when... tough can be 2-3 different ways. Tough can be, you can be down and not inspired or not know which way to head the business. And the other is the financial tough. No banks were willing to give you loans. Nobody's willing to rent you stores because they didn't really understand what the business meant. And so there was that as well. But I'm tougher than tough times. So I actually never took a single penny from my parents, not one ever. I just made it through. I stuck around and I said, well, I'm just going to do it. And I was also quite lucky. I started to get a lot of collaborated work, so which didn't necessarily have to do with my investments. So I'd get BMW wanted to collaborate with me, and so I worked with them for almost 11 to 14 years.
Wow.
I launched all the agencies, I developed ideas and movies, and at one point they asked me to do the interiors of the new 7 series, which was great. So, I started working with Judith Lieber in America. That was very well paying.
Yes.
I did Ardenox with the Jindal Steel people. And I think the thing with me is I find that I love the idea, Ambika, of limitlessness. Like, I don't see any reason why I need to limit myself. Like, if someone said to me, would you like to, like, this coaster has been designed by me. Okay, I know nothing about steel. I know nothing about metal, but I was willing to learn. So I said to Jindal Steel, they said, oh, we like your handwriting, we like your aesthetics, would you like to do something with us? I said, I'd love to, but I need to learn. So I went to Hisar, I spent some time at the factory, I learned about steel, things that can be done to steel, things that can't be, how molds are made, how etchings are done, what laser can do to steel. And then I just did that, and that continued for many years. So I feel like, there's no reason that I need to kind of limit myself only to clothing and fashion. I feel like I'm a design person.
All right. But what's your advice for all the young people out there who want to start a business? Because obviously the times you started, you were the only one with an education, maybe.
No, not me.
But now,
not the only, but one of the very few.
One of the very, very few. But now there's so many educated designers. So what kind of structure would you ask them to follow in terms of starting their business?
I have a lot of people who come to intern with me. I have a lot of people, a lot of parents will send their children to me for advice, who are like 18, 19, just coming out of school, wondering if they should go to design school, just trying to get more information. And I always ask them, why do you want to be a designer? So I can always tell the ones who have the guts and the grit and who might make it, and the ones who are in for the wrong reason. So some people will say, like, innocently, of course, oh, I want to be famous. And that's completely wrong, because you can be famous for many other reasons. You can be infamous as well. That is true. Infamous as well. But I think the ones who actually say, I like sculpture, and so I actually sit on the NIFT interviews when the kids are being interviewed to get into the final, into the design course. And for many years I've done it. And you have to ask them all sorts of questions. So sometimes you throw something very bizarre at them. Like, so there's one guy, he actually was a chemistry honors student, brilliant chap, still a friend. And he could draw beautifully, and I asked him, I said, who do the roads belong to? And he might have come up with an answer like it belongs to the state government. Or, he said, for me, the roads belong to that voluptuous, beautiful Rajasthani woman who's wearing the fuchsia pink lehenga with a little choli and her little silver on her and carrying her child in a brick load on her head. And when she crosses the road, all the trucks stop for her. And I thought, wow, this man can think. And that's inspiration, because a lot of fashion design is about inspiration and storytelling. So I always can tell people, don't do it for the wrong reasons, because then you will never succeed. And that leads to tremendous frustrations, I feel.
Okay, but what according to you is the best part about the business of fashion?
I think the creative aspect. I think the fact that you can learn, you never stop learning. Like, I'm now going to start working on Couture Week for July for 24. I'm already excited. We just finished a show which you saw last week. And I was at work back the next day and I was telling my design team, okay, now let's get Couture Week. They're like looking at my face, you're mad, let's take a weekend off. So I said, okay, take your weekend off and today we'll start on Couture Week. You never stop learning, Ambika. You're perpetually researching, you're perpetually looking for inspiration. Could be through a song, could be through a poem, could be through a movie, could be through somebody talented like you, could be, your beautiful hazel eyes. There's so much inspiration and beauty around the world, And I think this is the thing, when you're a fashion design person, you never stop learning.
What according to you is the worst part about the business of fashion?
What is the worst part about the business of fashion? I think the bhed chal.
What is bhed chal?
Bhed chal in the sense that, everybody wants to be in fashion, everybody wants to be part of the design world. A lot of people don't know why they want to do it. They want to be seen, they think it's page 3, they think it's the cover of Vogue, they think it's hobnobbing with Bollywood, they think it's that. And I think that makes the business very cluttered. Some people, will make it by being just pushy, and some very talented people will actually get left behind. And I think something about the fashion world, I don't know what it is, and I still cannot answer it till today. What allures people to fashion? Is it the glamour? Is it the lifestyle? Is it the popularity? Is it the flash bulbs and lights? But I think it's the clutter. Like when I go to a fashion week, the kind of people who are there who are just looking to take selfies and who want to take pictures, and I think those are just people who kind of make the business a little bit silly.
But otherwise, what do you think about the business? Is it hard? Like, what kind of timeline should people give themselves to be a part of the business? And if it is not working out, despite all their efforts, at what point do you
it's a very tough business.
Do you pull the plug out?
It's a very tough business. It's a very tough business to make it in. It's a very tough business to last in. It's a very tough business to stay relevant in. I'm not saying it can't be done. I've done it. There's many of my contemporaries who are doing it. There's a lot of young designers who are doing it and doing it very well as well. But I think there's two things with fashion which are very important. There is no substitute for hard work and discipline. It's as simple as that. There is no substitute for that. If you think by looking pretty and having a beautiful house and getting yourself photographed here and there, you're going to make it, kudos. It's not going to work for you. You have to be disciplined. I still get to work on time. I'm still the last one who leaves work. I'm on top of everything else. And there is, of course, you build a team. But I think you give yourself a good, I would say, 5 to 10 years before you really find your footholding in an industry, Some people are very lucky. Some people are very talented. Some people will make it very, very quickly. I think I was lucky that I got noticed very quickly, but obviously that notice hasn't brought me 30 years later. You perpetually have to keep reinventing yourself, and that takes work.
And do you think online has made it easier or tougher?
So I think there was a massive shift, Ambika, in the online buying or the online interest, especially through the pandemic, during and after the pandemic, because people are, so let's say I have a client coming in from London, who are my regular clients. I've done other weddings in their family. They want to come in from London or New York And so the husband, the wife, the daughter who's getting married, maybe the brother, the younger daughter who will also want to get clothes, all 5 of them have to come. It costs travel, hotels, time, everybody's times have to coincide. And I think now people have understood that you can actually buy off of Instagram or websites or online without having to, but what it does take, so let's say we sell maybe 10% of our sales are online, of our annual sales. But they don't just go to the website and see a picture and order it. They call, we do video calls, they want to look at it. Sometimes we call a fit model, we'll show them the garment. So there's a lot of, I wouldn't say hand holding, but I would say there's a lot of back and forth whereby it becomes much simpler and easier for them to see the garment. Because I don't think people are going to really buy a wedding lehenga just by seeing it on a website as a picture. They want a little bit more personalized, and I think Indians are like that.
Yes.
They want to get involved in that whole wedding attire, but it's something that's definitely growing for us as well.
So, talking about online, and again going back to my previous question, at which point should somebody know that they need to exit the business of fashion?
It's hard to say. I think some people never learn. Some people never learn.
But then if they don't learn, they have clearly ample capital to keep themselves going through the cycles of fashion.
I mean, yes.
And which is not a cheap business to be in.
No.
So
I know people who spend so much money. I mean, I think just their annual spend on shows and campaigns and advertising and maybe in tens of crores. I'm not talking 1 or 2, tens of crores, and their revenue is probably not even 1/10 of it.
So how are they managing the?
Well, maybe they have the money, maybe they have the family support, maybe they come from wealth, I don't know. Some parents are willing to support you through that. Maybe they just have the disposable money to be able to do that. But it's not a business, and it's not something that will grow. And it's also not something, a lot of people do it for their own ego. Like, I'm in the business, I'm a fashion designer. I remember, it's hilarious. I was invited to the American Embassy for dinner a few years ago, and there was a few other fashion designers here. And Mr. Ambassador, when I was introduced to him, and somebody said, "Oh, by the way, this is Suneet Varma. He's also a fashion designer." He said, "Isn't everybody in your country a fashion designer?" That's the thing. I mean, it's such a huge aspiration to be a fashion designer. Look at the amount of institutes and schools. There's like, when I started to teach at NIFT, my first job was teaching at NIFT. There was only one, the one at Delhi. Now I think there are 21, from Gandhinagar to Chandigarh to Chennai to Hyderabad to Mumbai to, they're all over. There's 21 NIFTs, there's 100 NIFDs, there's so many other schools, this school of design and this school of design.
So there are lots of them. So, but at which point, if they don't have the family support, they are in a business where they're not breaking even, at which point, you said 5-10 years. So at which point do you exit?
See, honestly speaking, I don't think you need to lose all your money.
Yeah.
Because you may have acumen for something else. You may, and there's lots of, so this is the interesting question actually you asked, because fashion design, fashion business today has many other branches. You can become a stylist. So technically, stylists are very important. Almost every social lady today in the city has a stylist. Almost every magazine has stylists. Every film has stylists. Every ad campaign has stylists. Every website has stylists. You can become a stylist. You can become a source person. There is so many other ancillary ways of being able to stay in the business that you don't necessarily have to be a design person. You can be in a related business. And I think this is the great thing. A lot of the students who come out of NIFT today, don't end up being designers, Ambika. Some do. I would say maybe a handful, maybe 20%. The rest go into other spheres of the business. And I think that's great because you need that support system as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
And on the positive side, at which point would a designer know he or she is going to become big?
Oh God.
Or you think it's just instant, or like when they're being sourced a lot, what's a sign that you are going to make it big?
I mean, I think, when you get sourced a lot, when there's a lot of interest in your brand, and I think when you understand that you have some unique USP, you have something that is not available anywhere else. You have a talent, whether it's sculpted clothing, or whether it's a new way of looking at sexy, or whether it's how you treat India modern, how you take an Indian inspiration but you treat it in a more modern way. And I think when that moment comes, you know it. And you're not the only one. Everybody else around you also knows it.
All right.
Yeah.
Are Bollywood stylists the key ringleaders of fashion?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think they're doing their job. So a lot of the Bollywood stylists are doing a great job. They're dressing. I mean, in the old days, the Bollywood actresses were not very well dressed. They'd wear, funny-looking bras and weird-looking clothes and not such great makeup. And now I think the stylists have brought in some freshness. They look like real people. They fit the role how they're meant to. There's a lot of great Bollywood stars whose work I really, really like. But they're not the ringleaders. They're doing their job. And I think the fashion designers are doing their job. And I think when you meet a fashion designer and a stylist who can come together and create something magical, then that's really beautiful.
And last question, how do
Yes.
you feel about Reliance and Aditya Birla Group acquiring so many fashion designers? Do you think it's great for the fashion community, or
Yes.
what's your view on that?
So I think that was it's a natural progression of the design world. It was definitely going to happen at some point. I think the pandemic pushed it over. Suddenly a lot of designers and businesses became slow and the overheads became very high, and this is when these corporates kind of moved in very quickly. So I think it's great. I think it's natural progression. Every company, whether you make plastics or whether you make furniture, your textile, everybody at some point wants investors. And they want to grow the business, and they want to get listed, and they want to go public. So this is exactly what's going to happen to the fashion design business as well. And I think it's great that Aditya Birla Group and Reliance both actually understand luxury, both actually have managed fashion businesses. So it's not like some Lala sitting somewhere and say, okay, here's my 50 crores and I will own part of your company. Because then they will not help you grow it.
Yeah.
They will just technically own you. And that's a bad and dead investment. But these guys are actually mavericks at building massive businesses. So I think it's great. It's great for the industry.
And what's the future for your own business? Are you going to be like setting up more stores? It's 30 years already.
Yes.
What's the plan?
Yes, we've just opened a new store at DLF Emporia. We're looking to open a new one in Mumbai. There's a lot of stuff going on. I just collaborated with Lee Jeans, which is, you're the first one to be hearing this. So it's going to be called Lee into Suneet Varma,
nice.
And it's going to be retailing in all of Southeast Asia. So that's really exciting. So we'll launch it Fashion Week in Lakme, that first collection, and we have a Bollywood star as the face of the brand. We've just shot the campaign. I just did a tie-up with a home furnishing company in Bangalore. It's a 6-year licensing agreement.
What fun.
So it says Suneet Varma for Asan Decor. So we're already selling in about 350 stores in India and about 250 stores in the Middle East. So my hands are full. I'm busy.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah,
Anyway.
it's fun.
Yeah, thank you so much
Thank
for your
you,
time.
thank you for coming over. Great talking to you.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation with our storyteller of the day, Suneet Varma. Thank you for watching.